In the headlines this hour, Prime Minister nominee Ahn Dai-hee resigns following criticism that he had made too much money as a lawyer, allegedly taking advantage of his status as a former Supreme Court justice. A fire at a nursing home in southern Korea kills more than 20 people, mostly elderly patients. And U.S. President Barack Obama announced his plans to pull out all American troops in Afghanistan by 2016, bringing an end to the longest war in U.S. history by the time he leaves office.
Hello and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sean Lim.
I'm Kang Chiri. Thanks for joining us. We begin with a setback in the president's reform drives. President Park Geun-hye's replacement nominee for Prime Minister Ahn Dai-hee withdrew himself just under a week since his appointment.
He stepped down amid controversy over his post-retirement earnings as a lawyer based on allegations that he was granted special privileges from his previous post as a Supreme Court justice. Chae Yu-sun has our lead story.
I'm stepping down as the nominee for Prime Minister. I'm sorry for disappointing the nation over allegations that I received privileges for my post.
At a press conference Wednesday, Ahn said his nomination would only stand to burden the government and that it had already caused his family stress. He also apologized to the president for the recent dispute. Ahn's withdrawal comes just 6 days after President Park tapped him to be her new prime minister, citing his principles and integrity, saying they would help him successfully carry out the much-needed reforms in the public sector and the government. But soon after he got the presidential nod, it was revealed he made about $1.5 million in a period of just 5 months working as a lawyer after leaving the Supreme Court. Although he had previously donated a third of the amount and said he would return the remaining $1 million to society earlier this week, that didn't stop the main opposition party from demanding his resignation. The presidential office, citing the chief of staff, said President Park seemed regretful upon receiving Ahn's resignation just before the press conference. Wednesday's development is expected to put the brakes on the president's drive to restructure the government and to correct irregularities in the public sector in the aftermath of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. At the National Assembly, the ruling Saenuri Party also expressed regret that Ahn didn't get a chance to have his qualifications put to the test at a hearing. The opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, on the other hand, gave a sigh of relief, then criticized the presidential office's incompetent personnel review system. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News.
The need for the president's reform efforts of the nation's safety management system received more confirmation today as Korea woke up to news of yet another horrible accident. At least 21 people have been killed in a fire at a nursing home in southern Korea after a patient, it is believed, who has set fire to a room. But the greater tragedy may be a violation of a law requiring enough hospital staff who could have saved the victims. Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
Most of the victims were in their 70s, as the hospital specializes in taking care of senior citizens with chronic health conditions. According to Yonhap News Agency on Wednesday, 21 people were killed while 8 others are still receiving treatment. But the number of dead is likely to rise, as 6 are said to be in serious condition. Firefighters say the blaze was brought under control within half an hour, but many died or were affected from inhaling smoke and toxic gases. Police have taken an 81-year-old male dementia patient into custody on charges of arson. Officers say they have surveillance camera footage of the suspect, identified only by his last name Kim, going in and out of the room 2 minutes before the fire was ignited in the room. The hospital, which had claimed an electrical short sparked the fire, is suspected of having only 3 nurses on the night shift for the ward. They were taking care of some 80 elderly stroke and dementia patients who would have needed help escaping. Because the lack of medical staff on duty may have contributed to the high death toll, authorities are investigating whether the hospital broke the law by not having enough staff on standby. It was one of the 3 major fires in the country Wednesday, just hours after the hospital blaze. A 71-year-old man started a fire with highly flammable liquid inside a subway car in Seoul. There were no injured reported. The suspect reportedly confessed to police of starting the fire and said he was trying to commit suicide. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
With just about a week to go before local elections here in Korea, the opinion polls show the ruling party trailing in key races nationwide. But the party still enjoys a level of support in 2 central Korean provinces where its candidates are in tight election battles against more liberal opponents. Our Ji Myung-gil explains.
Korea's 2 Chungcheongdo provinces are not just in the center of Korea geographically, they also tend to be a litmus test for overall election results. It's why the leadership of Korea's 2 biggest political parties spent the first day of campaigning last week on the stump for local candidates in the 2 central provinces. And it's an especially important region for the ruling Saenuri Party for the elections this time round. Whereas public anger over last month's Seoul ferry accident has had a notable impact negatively on ruling party candidates in Seoul and its surrounding areas, that sentiment hasn't quite extended to the 2 Chungcheongdo provinces. According to recent opinion polls conducted by ACE Research, the main opposition and ruling party candidates for governor are in neck-and-neck races there. Moreover, nearly a third of the region's voters are still undecided. And the Saenuri Party is faring far better in the races for mayor of 2 main Chungcheong cities of Daejeon and Sejong City. With the ruling Saenuri Party badly trailing in the vitally important races in the capital and nearby Incheon City, the 2 Chungcheongdo provinces represent its best hope for a victory in the June 4th local elections. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Curry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Che-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Korea's growth forecast for the year may experience further cuts as think tanks here in the country begin to take in the economic impact of the April ferry disaster. Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Slow recovery following sluggish domestic consumption is prompting institutions to slash their growth projection for the Korean economy. Much of it has to do with consumers spending less after the Seoul ferry disaster in April, which the Korea Economic Research Institute says has raised red flags.
Forecasts for private consumption and household spending fell, and they're not expected to pick up anytime soon. Private consumption has not increased in the past 2 quarters, as it was fueled by negative consumer sentiment following the Seoul disaster.
The state-run economic policy think tank, the Korea Development Institute, has cut the country's growth forecast to 3.7% this year, down 0.2 percentage point from previous estimates. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok also voiced concerns that a freeze in consumer sentiment could slow down the Korean economy. Retail and leisure sectors were among those most affected by the ferry incident, according to reports by the Bank of Korea released on Wednesday. A need to contain this sentiment from further spreading into the corporate circle is gaining weight, as it could add uncertainties hampering business investments. Senior researcher of the KERI, Pyongyang-gyu, suggests getting a verdict on some 300 bills stalled at the National Assembly concerning labor laws that could make it harder for employers to lay off employees and shorten working hours. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
More Koreans are driving imported cars. The Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association says Korea imported over 75,000 cars worth over $2.5 billion in the first 4 months of the year. That's a jump of 54% on year in terms of volume. The number of imported cars registered last month also set a record at over 16,000. At this rate, the portion imported cars take up is expected to hit the 15% mark this year, up from 12.7% last year. LG Electronics has launched a revamped version of its flagship G3 high-end smartphone. It's equipped with a 5.5-inch screen and boosted resolution at 538 pixels per inch. The company hopes the new model takes a big bite out of Apple and Samsung as it plans to sell more than 10 million units of the model. Strategy Analytics says in the first quarter of the year, LG Electronics held a 4.2% share with sales of $3.2 billion US dollars, solidifying its number 3 ranking in the global smartphone market for the very first time. The global healthcare industry is booming, especially in Asia, with its rapidly aging population and fast technology, where healthcare devices are even going mobile to suit patients' needs. Our Yurian was at Asia's biggest healthcare congress near Seoul and tells us more about this emerging trend.
The Global Healthcare and Medical Tourism Conference is a chance for medical institutions to showcase their latest technologies. This booth, set up by a plastic surgery hospital, caught the eye of visitors by providing a unique consulting experience. Now, with my pictures taken, this special camera will come up with a 3D image of my face, which we can use to apply different types of surgeries. In just about 5 minutes, the consultant shows me with more refined eyes, a pointier nose, and a slimmer facial outline. While Korea is best known for its cosmetic surgery, the conference showed how local medical companies are jumping into the new industry of mobile healthcare devices. Take this portable heart monitor, for example.
The device can send the collected data to your smartphone via Bluetooth. You can then send it to your doctor directly.
Experts say the demand for such mobile health devices will rise.
As people live longer, there's a greater desire to take care of their health themselves. A lot of data has been made available through different sensor technologies. There's a rise in businesses that provide health services utilizing that data.
The abundance of data also enables doctors to treat their patients better.
And when you get that kind of information, you can have for the doctor a specific and also a clear diagnostic.
Melik says devices like this medicine dispenser are useful for patients who oftentimes forget to take their medicine.
The pharmacists have information that you take the right pill at the right time, and also is the patient sent back the information about the compliance.
More personalized medical services that save travel time for patients who can keep their health in check at home. Experts say mobile healthcare devices that allow for that will make up a huge bulk of the global health industry. Yurian, Arirang News.
The Park Geun-hye administration has pushed for the so-called creative economy as the next growth model for the country. Park Ji-won reports on the government's plans to nurture the next generation of creative thinkers who can make the creative economy a reality.
The heart of any creative economy lies within the contents industry, spanning diverse sectors like film, music, and gaming, industries in which Korea has shown steady growth in recent years. Korea had the world's 7th biggest media entertainment industry in 2012, raking in some $45 billion US dollars. The nation's contents industry in total logged an annual revenue of nearly $90 billion last year, up more than 4% on year. Zeroing in on its great potential for growth, the government aims to increase its annual revenue further to nearly $120 billion by 2017. That means revenue would have to increase by more than 7% every year for the next couple of years. To achieve the goal, the government has unveiled diverse measures to encourage the nation's young pioneers with creative minds. As one of many efforts, the government will expand the amount of investment funds jointly raised by the private and public for small and mid-sized content businesses to $1.6 billion US dollars by 2016. Opening up of the first Content Korea Lab, A free public center equipped with diverse facilities like recording studios and video editing rooms is also one of the efforts to stimulate the nation's creativity.
Content Korea Lab is where anyone with creative ideas can gather and fuse their minds with others to initiate new projects.
The Cultural Ministry plans to open 10 more centers nationwide by 2017 to act as hubs for inspiring and cultivating even greater creativity for the future. The ministry also aims to pursue balanced growth between the strong sectors like broadcasting, gaming, and films, and relatively weak ones like the music, musical, and animation sectors. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
We recently talked about the huge natural gas deal between China and Russia. For an in-depth analysis on the significance of this agreement and its implications on energy prices and also on Korean businesses, we have Kim Nam-il, Managing Director of the Korea Energy Economics Institute, joining us here in the studio. Thank you so much for making time for us today. So what kind of role do you think that this deal will make in terms of the price of energy in the region and also some of the political implications?
I think basically this deal is regarding impact on Korea is kind of good news for South Korea. This deal has significant implication on Korea gas perspective, the gas price, future price, and gas demand and supply balance. It's very important for Korea gas perspective.
And just to follow up on what you just said, it is expected to affect Korea's energy sector at least. What kind of impact are we talking about?
Okay. We heard from newspapers the contracted price level is around $350 per 100 cubic meters, which is can be translated into a little bit less than $10 in MMBTU units commonly used. You know, the $10 level is very important. This level is slightly lower than the level where Russia supplies gas to European countries, around $11. However, it's well below the level where Korea and Japan have to pay for importing LNG, around $15. You know, $15. So, if the estimated contract price, gas price, around $10 of this agreement becomes a new reference price, it would be helpful for Korea and Japan to negotiate with gas supply countries such as Middle East, Australia, Canada, or United States for future gas imports.
That's only if we get an agreement from our gas suppliers. Otherwise, China seems to have given themselves a huge price advantage in terms of energy usage. There have been some people who said that Korea should have gotten involved in this deal. Do you think that was the case?
Well, actually, for a long time, Russia played game between China and Korea. But the volume, the volumes the Russia can sell is a huge difference. China is very big and Korea is much smaller. So actually, Russia play game, but the main target from Russia's perspective was China. You know, so actually we have to be very careful of this fact.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise tonight.
Thank you very much.
President Barack Obama says the U.S. plans to remove all American troops from Afghanistan by 2016 as it brings an end to America's longest war.
With more on that, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the United States is finally on track to pull out of Afghanistan, but what are we looking at in terms of a timetable?
Well, speaking at the White House, President Obama said it's going to be a gradual withdrawal. The military will start by reducing the number of American soldiers there by 32,000 to just under 10,000 by the end of this year. Those remaining troops will train Afghan security forces and support counterterrorism operations. By the end of 2015, that number will be cut in half as the U.S. wraps up its combat mission in the country.
Combat mission will be over by the end of this year. 1 year later, by the end of 2016, our military will draw down to a normal embassy presence in Kabul with a security assistance component, just as we've done in Iraq.
It will put an end to more than 12 years of war, which has killed over 2,000 U.S. troops and countless more on the Afghan side. The withdrawal plan has not come without criticism in the U.S., as Republicans say the timeline is too tight. Scores of political figures, protest leaders, and academics in Thailand have been arrested, with many still in hiding following last week's military coup. A deputy spokesman for the Thai military says about 200 people have already been detained, but added that 53 have disobeyed the summons by the military council, which is now effectively running the country. On Wednesday, more anti-government protest leaders turned themselves into police for questioning, rejecting allegations of treason and other criminal charges. Earlier, Thailand's military junta had detained former education minister Jatara Chai-sang, who had been a strong critic of the military takeover. The military has relaxed its public curfew. However, it is still imposing a strict ban on any political gatherings. And Google has been expanding to many emerging sectors, from renewable energy to even robots, and it looks like they're about to take on the auto industry as well. The internet search giant announced on Wednesday that it would start making its own self-driving vehicles. Now, Google has been experimenting with driverless technology for years, but these new high-tech cars will not have any traditional controls, such as a steering wheel, accelerator, or even brake pedals. The company said that battery-powered vehicles will be completely driven by computers and sensors. Google says it plans to build about 100 prototypes later this summer. And if all goes well, the company wants to launch a small pilot program in California over the next couple years. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. A slew of friendly matches were held across the globe as teams prepare for the World Cup. And that included South Korea and Tunisia, who locked horns at Seoul World Cup Stadium. It was a packed house, and Tunisia was the first to press, matched by an aggressive Korean attack. But Korea's defensive problems came to light as the visitors netted the first goal late in the first half. In the second half, Korea's midfield continued to create chances, but there was a scary moment. Defender Hong Jung-ho was carried off with an ankle injury, and there are no updates on that just yet. And Tunisia wins this one 1-0, but Korea will have a chance to work out the kinks against Ghana before the start of the World Cup. And heading to the NBA hardcourt, the Western Conference Finals just got a bit more interesting as the OKC Thunder took down the San Antonio Spurs in Game 4. Russell Westbrook scored 40 with 10 assists. Kevin Durant contributed 31 points, and Serge Ibaka swatted away 3 shots in the 105-92 win. The timing of Ibaka's return couldn't have been better because the Thunder have won the last 2 with him in the lineup to even up the series at 2 games apiece. And over in the MLB, it was Korea night at Dodger Stadium, and to celebrate, former Los Angeles Dodger Park Chan-ho threw the ceremonial first pitch, and Ryunjin bobblehead dolls were handed out. Aside from that, the Dodgers beat the Reds 6-3 for the sweep of the series, and Zach Greinke notched his 8th win of the season. And now that takes us to the KBO, and getting to Wednesday's top matchup, the Samsung Lions took on the LG Twins in Seoul. Now, the Twins snapped the Lions streak at 11 games last night, but the Lions score first. It's Choi Young-woo who hits one home in the 4th before Kim Sang-soo triples to bring a runner in the 5th. Now, later on in the game, LG answers back in the bottom of that inning. Jung Hee-yoon doubles for 2 scores, add 1 more. It's 3-2 LG, but we go to the 8th. Lee Seung-yup, he hits a 3-run homer to put Samsung back ahead, and Samsung holds on to win this one 7-4. And looking at the other games, NC demolishes Hanwha 18-1. Meanwhile, Nexon beats SK at home 7-5. Kia and Tucson are still in this one. Tucson's leading it 9-6. Well, that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Overnight, those in Jeju experienced the first tropical night of the season, which means conditions are only bound to get hotter.
Tropical, huh? So for more, let's go to Po-kyung at the Weather Center. Po-kyung, do tell us more.
Guys, I'm not sure if you noticed, but we continue to see high levels of toxic dust nationwide, and it looks like such conditions could last through tomorrow in some regions. At the moment, Seoul is seeing 166 micrograms per cubic meter of fine dust, and Jeonju 152 micrograms. However, levels have dropped to the safe range in parts of the southern regions, which are receiving heavy rainfall at this hour. Now, on Thursday, UV rays are forecast to soar to the very high range in most parts of the country. At the moment, the nation is under the influence of a high-pressure system near Shanghai, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. Now, tomorrow's daytime high in Seoul is forecast to jump to 31 degrees, making things feel like summer. And it looks like we won't be getting rain anytime soon after this round of showers down south. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Daegu soars to 34 degrees with sunny skies, while Gwangju jumps to 32. Moving on to other places, Daejeon and Mount Kumgang reach 31 degrees, while Dokdo hits 20. That's all the updates we're following at this hour, but I'll see you again after midnight.
Po-kyung, thank you very much for that, as always. And that does it for this edition of Primetime News.
Thanks for watching, and hope you can join me a little bit later for Late Night Edition.